season, and it's May 3rd. We've been outside doing a lot of chores in the garden, and when we were out here, we heard some noises in the bushes, actually across the street, and there's a mama and a baby right here, about 40 feet out from us. She was standing right here, got spooked a little, and she trotted over there. But yeah, so we're just here about to talk about the garden, how it's starting, how everything's going. Some things are going bad, but most things are going really great. There's always something bad going on about the beginning of something. We're figuring out what it is and how to treat it, and it has to do with the plants, and we can show you guys a little bit more of that, and then how it happened and what we're gonna do next time to prevent that. The mosquitoes are out, and we have our mosquito magnet going right now, so it's sucking up all the mosquitoes. But yeah, it's just fun to stand out here and watch them move, because they really don't care, kind of, the animal, until you mess with them.
Or get too close.
Yeah, or get too close. She'll be very protective of her baby, but as us, or we're talking right now, and they're just totally fine eating. They know they're a large animal, and they know they can kill you, and they are just grazing the land. All the leaves are starting to come through on the birch trees. They're just tiny little things right now, and they're gonna blossom into this huge leaf here pretty soon. And they're super excited about the new vegetation that is coming up out of the ground. They're just munching anything that's green. And they are animals that just constantly move. They lay down sometimes, but they're usually on this path that they follow. They'll do like laps around town. Like, they have this space where they are familiar with, and they just do it constantly through the whole year. And we've seen these two before. It's been a little bit while. The baby is much bigger now than when we saw her or him last time. And yeah, we're in their territory, we're in their land, and it's just super fun to experience this.
So here we are in the greenhouse where we start all our seedlings. Right in here we have all different types of bell peppers, squashes, tomato plants, and we have them in these plastic containers now, so that we can take them outside to harden them off by just putting the lid on them, kind of a little bit off, so it has some breathing space, but it acts like a greenhouse inside there, but allows the cool air in, so we can harden them off. And then of course we have all different types of cherries and berries over here. And we have one more container back here. And then these ones right over here are marigolds, which we do have more of them, because we heard the marigolds are actually a great defense flower against the aphids, I think it is. They'll attack the marigolds instead of our plants. So we're going to be sporadically placing the marigolds all over our garden, and plus it makes it look really pretty. And then we have some seedlings over here. These are all these ones are vegetables. We got spinach, we got lettuce, actually many different types of lettuce, and more of our marigolds grown in there. We have back here, we have what is that?
Beets.
Golden beets. We have just started dill a little bit ago. And we started a few more things. We have our basil over here. And we actually just redid our tomatoes. So the whole reason that our tomatoes are not grown yet, for the most part, we do have some in here, is because they got something called gray mold. That's what it is. They got gray mold, and it's from being in a humid climate and not very good air circulation, and that was our bad on that. So right over here you can actually see that it has this white mold all over it. So unfortunately, only probably about 3 tomatoes made it through. Only 3 tomatoes made it through. One of them being our tomato tio or something like that. So they actually are grown in little husks. They're like probably about that big, and they're grown in a husk. And then they fall to the ground. They're also known as ground cherries. And then you pick them up, and they can last up to 3 months if you never take them out of the husk. So that's what we have going on in here. We have lots of different vegetables that we really want to plant. And oh yeah, down here, these are our Brussels sprouts, which we love Brussels sprouts, so we made lots of those. So let's go out to our garden and greenhouse to see what we're doing out there.
So now we're outside and we're gonna go into the actual greenhouse that is not the bedroom. This greenhouse lasted us all winter. We did not take the top off this time or the sides, because last year we just left the poles and we had so much snow we didn't rake any of it off, and it held up so well. I'm actually really impressed. How much did we pay? Like $200 or something?
Yeah.
Something like that. So it's a 10 by 10, and last season we built these raised beds for in here because our first year we didn't have any and it just wasn't going well. So what we keep in here is tomatoes, bell peppers, anything hot peppery. We'll do corn in here. We will do a couple herbs, and that's pretty much it because it gets filled up really quick. But the reason why we have those specifically is because usually our summers aren't hot enough to have these produced. They need high heat, high humidity, and we just most of the time don't have that in Alaska. So we keep them in here. The greenhouse is doing okay. We don't really have too many complaints. It doesn't stay as warm as we want, but to solve that, we're gonna actually build one this year, and we're super excited about it because we've been saving up lumber for so long. We go to Home Depot and buy their coal lumber, so it's either warped, a little bit chipped, just ugly, that people don't want to use to build their houses with. And we used all of that for the chicken coop, and it worked out so well. We saved so much money. It's 70% off each item you get, and it saves us tons and tons of money because we want to do so many projects, but lumber is so expensive. I just can't think about spending $4 just for a little 2x4. So we do buy some things. We buy our metal roofing. We're gonna have to buy, panels for this that aren't gonna be on clearance and things like that. But there's so many other things that we've bought on clearance. So let's go stand out there and talk a little bit more and where it's gonna go. All right, so the greenhouse is gonna go somewhere on this property. We're really not too sure yet. It's gonna be close. It's gonna be around this proximity area, and we really don't know how big, we don't know how tall, we don't know how wide. We know we want a really good size, at least 16 feet long and 12 feet wide. We're not too sure. It all depends on how much lumber we actually end up having, and we're gonna do it well. We're gonna anchor it to the ground. I can't think of the word. And we didn't do that to the greenhouse or the chicken coop. We just put straight onto the ground, and we thought that was good enough for them. It's just a chicken coop. We didn't really care that much. But with this, it's gonna be having water in it. It's gonna be hot. It's gonna be humid. It's gonna want to rot. So to prevent that, we're gonna raise it off the ground because this is the lower part of our property, and we are gonna use all pressure treated wood, hopefully, just so it helps the life of it because it won't rot as quickly. But we're just thrilled to actually build one to keep all the vegetables and flowers warm in the early spring. That way we can just have things growing and have tomatoes by May or June. So that's going to be super awesome. That's the whole point of it, is to just get an early kickstart on spring and be able to have stuff start growing, because our summer is so short that it's so hard to do anything that takes over 70 days, to be honest. And if it's a cold summer, it's just not going to work out how people hope it would turn out to be, just like us last year. But there's certain things that thrive in cold. Most things thrive in warmth, but that's just the weather we deal with here, and we work around it, and we don't get too upset about it. Like all of our tomatoes dying, we were sad at first, but you know, it happens. It beats you know, buying it from the grocery store or paying $5 for a start from Home Depot, which there is a couple things we're gonna have to buy from Home Depot that just not realistically we can plant. It's not going to be much. We didn't buy anything from a plant store last year for the most part, besides berries and things like that. And we're doing more flowers this year, and that's all going to just be so much easier once we have a greenhouse.
Okay.
See, that's the thing. I don't talk that much on this channel, and I love this channel. And it looks like I'm grumpy sometimes, and sometimes I am, but most of the time I'm not. I'm just focused, and I like to get things done quickly and efficiently, and I have ADHD, so my mind goes all over the place. But let's talk about our raspberries and all the other things that are growing around the garden this time on May 3rd. So, our raspberry patch, or field, orchard, raspberry field,
I guess you can say orchard.
it's a raspberry orchard. It's not a fruit. Well, it is a fruit, duh. But, so we just trimmed them all about last week. And what we read online is that you trim them in half from the previous year. And the new sprouts that come out of the ground, like this one, see how he has a little stud there? This is the old one, these two big ones right here from last year, and you cut them in half, and then the next year, these two will grow something, and the two newest ones won't grow anything, and vice versa. Every year you'll get new sprouts, and it's just a fluctuating of raspberries throughout each season. And then we do have a few roses on the end of our beds that a friend gave us, so that's pretty cool. Roses are not a thing up in Alaska. Well, there are. There's roses,
there's wild
but there's
ones.
not like the roses you are thinking of. And over here we have Rick's cherry bush, one of two that he planted last season, and a moose came by and grazed it. What happens when they do that is that if it's a new plant, it can shock it so bad that it kills it over a winter because it's so cold and it doesn't have time to heal itself. And then by the time spring comes, it's trying so hard to keep itself alive from the demolish it happened to it in fall or winter, that it doesn't pull through. So that's very unfortunate. Over on this side, we have an orchard. This is an actual orchard. It's an apple orchard. And it's our little 3 orchard trees. 3 apple trees. We have a honeycrisp. We have some kind of green one. We can go look. It's called a Battleford. It's a red/green. They're a little bit smaller than a Honeycrisp and than your normal apple, but they bunch up much more. And then over on this side, for the third one, we have a Gloria. And I think Gloria is pretty popular but they are just now starting to bud all of their new leaves and branches, and they made it over winter. We just planted them last fall, and we planted them pretty late in fall because we got them on clearance from Home Depot because the snow was gonna start, and they overwintered, and we're super excited about it. And then over on this part of the garden, now into the actual garden, we walk through our door that is still standing, and we come into this newly wood chipped garden. So we got a bunch of wood chips from Home Depot on clearance because the bags were ripped. And we have all different shapes, all different colors, and that's okay because I honestly like how the colors are just mixing together. It looks pretty cool, but what we really wanted to do for this was stop the weeds from growing because we didn't till or de-weed anything. Once we put these raised beds in 2 years ago. 2 years ago now? Yeah. 2 years ago. So it's just gonna help with that, and then also help warm up the whole area. It'll absorb heat and keep heat in, which is really good for the plants. A few things that are actually sprouting now that it is spring, and they actually sprouted about 2 weeks ago, are onions. And we have two different types of onions in here. We have walking onions, which are actually these guys right here. You can tell how they're popping up in different little areas. So they actually walk through their roots and they sprout that way.
No, it grows up and then they fall over.
Oh. So they grow up and they fall over. But yeah, that's one thing that's going. Here's some perennials. It's a flower. I don't know what kind of flower it's called, but they're all over the place. Right here we have the actual flower of Alaska. It is called the forget-me-not. And this comes back every year. It can grow huge into a big bush, and it's a beautiful green with beautiful blue flowers, and they're just these tiny little things, and there's hundreds of them on a bush, and it's so pretty. Yeah.
So talk about why there's holes in our garden.
There's holes in our garden because we had horseradish here, and we also had a
That's the horseradish.
Oh, that's the horseradish.
Yeah, right over there.
So we put it in a pot because we discovered last year it grew 5 feet wide and 5 feet tall. So we're like, we need to put it in its own pot out of the way, but still in the garden so the moose don't eat it. So that's what we came with that. This is our original onion plant that we got 3 years ago.
They're chives.
They're chives. Well, I guess it's still an onion.
Yeah.
But they are growing so beautifully, and they go so well on so many tops of different dishes. And this comes back every year, and it's super cool to have plants that come back every year because it's so much easier. It's just one less thing you have to start in friggin' March. So let's turn around really quick and look at our rhubarb. Rhubarb is like a weed in Alaska. It grows so well here, and it comes back every year. And in the early stages, it's so cool looking because it's so, I don't know, it just looks alive. And the dark maroon color it has is so pretty. And when they get bigger, they turn to a much lighter red, and the leaves are massive. This is another one that just gets massive, massive, massive. So we want to tame it a little. It produces so much rhubarb that we can just have tons and tons of jars of jam just from this plant. And then over here is a strawberry that a friend gave us. It started right here and ended up way over there. We just cut it back a bunch because it just took over this whole area over last summer. But it's a strawberry that is very rich, I would say.
Yeah. It's more like a wild.
Yeah, that's much lighter in color as far as a regular strawberry. It's more pink, and you pretty much eat them right off the vine because they don't store well, but they are super, super delicious, and it's just great having fresh strawberries the day you want it. So, oh, we missed the onions.
Oh, yeah.
Well, as you can tell, there's something in this bed, and it's more than just straw. There's our whole onion patch that gets us through the whole winter of onions. And they're spaced out about my hand width and about my hand length. There's a bulb every 6 inches in its surrounding. And we have a white onion, a yellow onion, and red onion. We really don't have a preference on onions. We just like having fresh onion. We cook with any color at any time. It doesn't really bother us, but they do really well here. And we figured we had some extra straw, so we decided to throw it on top to help it keep it moist in its early stages of life. So, as those go on, we have random things going on that we don't have any plans for yet. And that's always the fun part about a garden. There's always something different you can change. And down here are just some random potted things. We have this pine tree that is not native to Alaska. A friend gave it to us. I'm sorry I can't tell you the name, but it's doing super well. We do end up plant this somewhere around our house. We just don't know where yet.
We always end up putting it somewhere.
Yeah, something like that. But we also have, oh gosh, I don't even know what this is. Is this that berry?
Yeah.
It's the berry.
It's a berry one. I don't know if they're...
It's like a currant or something like that.
It's not
in that
currant.
sort. Elderberry maybe.
Yeah.
Could be an elderberry. We just don't know where to put it yet because...
Pretty permanent.
It's pretty permanent, yeah. We have little native spruce trees growing in here. We just like to plant them around the house because we really enjoy the spruce trees because they don't lose their leaves or their pine needles in winter, so it's good privacy. Over here we have lilacs, and then this is a barrel of weeds. And over in this bed, we have strawberries over here that we originally got 3 years ago, and those are your normal red strawberries that are just in everything. I transplanted some forget-me-nots last fall from the original plant that we saw in the beginning, and they just shoot off, and they do really well. In here we have a bunch of lilac transplants that a friend gave us. A lot of this stuff is from people that we know, and it's so nice having that community here. We gotta figure out a place for these because they are also a root grower and shooter, so they will just sprout all over. This beautiful plant that is starting to show its leaves is a high bush cranberry.
It might be.
I think it's a high bush cranberry, and they have really tiny red berries that you can just make into jams, make into a sauce for dessert, and those are pretty good. Over there is some other kind of berry that a friend gave us, and I just planted it there to kind of have a barrier of some sort for in the future between the fence and the greenhouse, just to kind of make division. No reason why. We have a bunch of pine trees that we planted out about a couple days ago that were actually overwintered in a pot in a 5-gallon bucket, and we planted them all over the place. And we don't plan on seeing those trees maturing, but they'll at least get big enough to where we can actually see them grow and help us with privacy and just have a different kind of pine tree in here, because it's just nice having a variety of trees, because there's basically 2 trees in Alaska. It's the spruce and the
Cotton. Oh yeah, and cottonwood.
And that's about it. So that's all of our trees pretty much. So it's fun making a variety to look at.
Really quick, it's an update on our chickens that we have in here. We have placed our 2 newer birds, or chickens, inside with the older ones that are tormenting them. They're in a cage so it can separate the mature chickens from the baby chickens. And even at the end of this video, we might do a little montage of the chickens growing up so far. So let's go ahead and check them out. Back. No. So, the one thing, we went to an expo, and the guy we actually bought these from, we had a few questions for him, so we asked him how to introduce our newer chickens with the older chickens. And he says once it's getting nicer outside, you put them in a cage separate from the rest, and it allows them to be together, but the older ones will kill the newer ones. So we still got to leave them separate. But because our temperatures still drop below 50, we have to have this heat lamp on at night for them to give them some warmth so that they don't freeze to death. But they do have their feathers now, and so they should be perfectly fine. But at night, the heater comes on, and they do sit under it a lot. But once it gets about 50 degrees or warmer, then it's not as worrisome about them getting too cold. So that's it. I gotta actually grab the eggs too. Okay.